Good morning, colleagues. Welcome to this session for the Teaching and Learning Strategy Group, session 8A, focusing on the Theory Praxis Nexus. My name is Francois Strydom. I'm the Senior Director for Teaching and Learning at the University of the Free State. I'm very privileged to chair this session with colleagues that will be speaking in this session: Dr. Thandi Lewin, Prof. Sizwe Mabizela, Ms. Chantyl Mulder, Mr. Robert Zwane, and Dr. Noluthando Toni. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask Thandi to make some opening remarks. Before she goes, I'll just give you a very brief summary of her bio in the prospectus. She works with DHET as the Chief Director for Institutional Government and Management Support in the University Education branch. Her responsibility typically entails student funding policy, oversight of NEXUS, university governance, and student development, among others. Since February this year, however, she was acting DDG. So from us, thank you for stepping in the transition, Thandi. We look forward to listening to you.
Thank you, Francois. Good morning, colleagues and friends, and thank you very much for this session. Luckily, I only have 5 minutes, so I will try and keep to that as best I can. And of course, given that I'm a policy person, I would want to add policy, theory, praxis, nexus. But anyway, we'll see how far I get with that. We are exploring ideas of the engaged university at this conference, and building on ideas of social justice and education for the public good. Higher education is called upon to be responsive, but the question is, responsive to what? To the needs of the economy, of employers, of the world of work, of what it requires to be skilled professionals, the needs of society and of national development, the instrumental role of higher education in providing graduates who understand the professional requirements of the world of work and who provide skills for a growing and developing economy. Indeed, the skills requirements of our economy and society are strongly referenced in education and development policy in this country, and the role of higher education is critical. And the expectations are very high. What kinds of graduateness is required for effective engagement in the rapidly changing, technologically driven and increasingly complex world of work and skills development? So South Africa has a very, very rich history of researching in the field of scholarship, of teaching and learning. There are decades of research on what it means to teach in higher education in the South African context. The knowledge about teaching and learning is also growing across all disciplines and fields of study, with growing numbers of researchers and academics reflecting on their own practice in teaching and learning and engaging theoretically with their field of study, understanding also their students' needs and interests, and being responsive to epistemological concerns, a growing emphasis on curriculum development skills, pedagogical practices, etc. If you look at the annual HELTASA conference papers, for example, and the growth of the work that HELTASA does, you can get a sense of how this field has changed and is constantly changing. It's also worth noting that many South African academics writing in this diverse field are globally recognized for their work, which is widely referenced in international settings and published in international journals. The Department of Higher Education and Training from 2018 started the University Capacity Development Program and Grant, which is now in its second 3-year cycle, focusing on transforming teaching, learning, researching, and leading towards enhanced quality, success, and equity in universities. The program provides institutional grants and supports a number of collaborative programs, as well as a range of programs focused on staff development. The other 2 focus areas are on student development and support and curriculum development. This is a critical program for driving the transformation of our higher education system in multiple areas, with a key focus on changing the demographics and development of the capacity of academic staff, thinking about responsive curricula, and understanding and improving student success, which incorporates epistemological access. So the idea of responsiveness and engagement then, while incorporating the important instrumental goals of higher education teaching and recognizing the public role of higher education, also needs to be responsive to ideas of the intrinsic, capability expanding, citizen building role of higher education teaching and learning. This requires constant engagement with and reflection on research, daily interactions with different levels of national and institutional policy, a reflective research-driven understanding of curriculum development, delivery, and pedagogical practice, and ultimately a responsive engagement with students, who they are, where they come from, how they learn and understand, what their aspirations are, and what they need in the learning environment. And just in order to finish before, so I don't go over my 5 minutes, just to say that Sue McKenna and Chrissy Bowie, two of our foremost South African-based scholars in the field of academic development and teaching and learning, have recently released a new book called Understanding Higher Education, Alternative Perspectives. I haven't actually yet got a copy of the book, but I'm looking forward to reading it. There was an article in University World News written by Mark Patterson, and it quoted as follows in terms of what they focus on in this book. And they say, a key challenge in this regard, according to the authors of Understanding Higher Education, is what they term the discourse of the decontextualized learner. In other words, the notion that student performance may be attributed solely to inherent individual characteristics, which fits in with the idea of universities as meritocracies operating in a kind of socio-cultural vacuum. Under this view, which according to the authors is a dominant one in the South African and many other national higher education systems, the university, the society in which the university exists, the history of the country, the development of the curriculum, these are all hidden from view as the explanations for success and failure hone in on the individual. Accordingly, the authors propose that the country's universities and government acknowledge the drawbacks of shaping policy and practice according to the idea of the decontextualized learner, and instead adopt the model of the student as social being as the focus of their efforts. Under this view, there are many ways of knowing and thus many ways of learning, the authors say. I'm very much looking forward to this session. Thank you, Francois.
Thank you very much, Thandi, for that fantastic introduction, giving us a wide range view of the investment of DHET, but also the importance of the scholarship of teaching and learning and the high expectations of teaching and learning. Right, colleagues, our first session is on professional and statutory body partnerships in practice. Our speaker there is Professor Sizwe Mabizela. It is my privilege to introduce him. I know him as my chair of the Teaching and Learning Strategy Group. He, when he's not the chair of that, he's the Vice-Chancellor of Rhodes University. He has been a wonderful proponent, defender, advocate for teaching and learning. He has got a doctorate in mathematics from Pennsylvania State. He's co-authored many research papers. He was departmental chair of pure and applied mathematics at UCT for 11 years. Prof. Mabizela, the list is long and meritorious. It's a wonderful privilege to listen to you. We look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning. Dobre utro. Thank you for your introduction, Chair, and thanks for the opportunity to share some thoughts regarding the engaged university, and particularly in relation to the role of universities vis-a-vis professional bodies. I will draw to some extent on the paper that was co-authored with Eunice Balim and John Mubangidze, titled Professional Bodies and Quality Assurance of Higher Education Programs in South Africa towards an appropriate framework. This paper was published in the South African Journal of Higher Education. Our starting point is that university education is more than just an accumulation of knowledge and facts, or acquisition of skills, or preparation of work-ready graduates. I'll come back to this point. It is fundamentally a formation of young people. It is a preparation and development of young people to play a significant role in our society. Now, there's a constant complaint by employers and to some extent the society that graduates are ill-prepared for the place of work or for the workplace. Universities have to prepare graduates for the future, to prepare them to solve problems that have not even been thought of, to prepare them to face unfamiliar and unexpected, uncertain, unknown, and unknowable challenges of the future. I think that is really important to understand, that it is not about preparing young people for the place of work. It is more fundamentally to prepare these young people for an unknown and unknowable future and the challenges of the future. And more critically, universities have to prepare young people to learn how to learn and how to unlearn and how to relearn. If universities were to focus on preparing graduates for the workplace, there would be a serious danger that by the time they graduated, the knowledge and skills they would have acquired would be obsolete. As we all know, we live in a world that is constantly changing. And so it would be a futile exercise to prepare young people for today's jobs because they may not be there tomorrow. Some of the university qualifications lead to professional services, such as teaching, accountancy, law, pharmacy, engineering, and others. And some professional bodies, like the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, SAICA, take a very keen interest in the quality of the graduates who are produced by universities. And particularly if these graduates intend joining the profession. Now, professions like accounting profession rely on their professional bodies to maintain what one might call educational and professional standards, quality assurance. As we noted in the paper mentioned before, the engagement between universities and professional bodies is both desirable and inevitable, given their shared interest in the preparation of graduates with the necessary educational outcomes that are of appropriate quality and that satisfy expectations at the interface between exit from university and entry into the practice of the profession. So it is in the best interests of the university, in the best interests of the professional body, and in the best interests of the students and society that the roles and responsibilities of each role player in the education and training of these future professionals are very clearly understood. It is also in the best interests of all parties that the transition from student to professional is made as hassle-free as possible, is made as smooth as possible. And of course, universities would want to produce graduates who can join their chosen professions and practice in the best interests of the society, but also in the best interests of their profession. Now, professional bodies need to know what knowledge, skills, and competencies the graduates have been exposed to at university, if they are to structure their professional training of graduates to become competent, capable professionals who are able to practice the profession. Now, without derogating from the primary role of the university to educate students for the future, professional bodies have an important role to play in ensuring that the graduates who are produced by our university system are not only equipped with the disciplinary or content knowledge, but are also able to acquire or develop appropriate technical or professional skills that are required in the profession, that they develop the right values and attitudes to facilitate a successful entry into their chosen profession. It is in the understanding of the separate but complementary roles and responsibilities that universities and professional bodies can cooperate, that they are able to collaborate and contribute to the development of the knowledge and the skills that a graduate needs for their chosen profession. And this is really important, that cooperation, that collaboration, that working together. Look, while some professional or technical skills can be acquired while still at universities, others can only be developed and acquired when a person is starting to practice the profession. So through interaction with universities, professional bodies can assist in ensuring that curricula are oriented towards the development of young people with the right skills and the right knowledge, particularly the latest information in the profession. And Thandi mentioned a curriculum development and pedagogical approaches. These are so critically important, and this is where professional bodies can play a really important role to enhance the quality of teaching and learning of young people. They can play a role in the quality assurance of the teaching and learning, and they can assist. Of course, we always need resources to strengthen the teaching and learning that will advance their profession. Let me just touch very briefly on the SAICA USAf initiative, which I think is an important case study. Because I believe it is instructive in highlighting engagement of universities with professional bodies and what can actually be achieved with appropriate engagement. Almost 2 years ago, Mr. Sizwe approached USAf with a request for cooperation and collaboration in educating and preparing chartered accountants who were not only technically competent, but also possess critical skills and values for the 21st century. And he pointed out that in respect of the accounting profession, there was a need, a desperate need for public universities to deliver accountancy graduates who were able to demonstrate the skills demanded by the 21st century's dynamic business reality. And in particular, they needed non-technical or what is sometimes referred to as generic skills in varying combinations and a different range of competence levels to, among first, to equip them for a variety of roles in the workplace and in society at large. Second, to work across knowledge domains, by which they mean that the accountants must be able to work alongside various other professions and experts in different knowledge areas. And for example, accountants need to work to have much deeper understanding and appreciation of digital developments, but do not need to have the same level of knowledge as an information technology expert or data scientist. Third, to fulfill their responsibilities, perform their tasks, and to realize their potential in all aspects of life. Fourth, to transfer these abilities from one context to another. And fifth, to use their abilities to develop appropriate and effective skills over a lifetime. Now, in order to respond to the identified critical need, we established a joint SAICA USAf steering committee, which comprises members of SAICA and academics to work together to come up with implementable teaching and learning solutions, which can be replicated for other professions. And this is to ensure that future accountants have the skill sets required for the 21st century. Now, this is an important way in which universities can cooperate and collaborate with professional bodies for the greater common good, for the good of the university, for the good of the profession, for the good of the students, and for the good of our society. Just to conclude, first, universities educate and prepare graduates for the future. A future that is unknown, a future that is unknowable, a future that is complex, a future that is uncertain. Universities can and universities must equip graduates with the skills and abilities to learn, to unlearn, and relearn. And universities must instill requisite values and attitudes in our graduates for them to play their critical role in our society. Universities must produce skilled professionals who are empathetic, who are ethical, and are critically engaged citizens who can contribute in every aspect of our democratic order. Second, it is not the primary purpose of universities to produce graduates who are work ready, young people who can walk into a job a day after their graduation. It is, however, the role of universities to produce trainable graduates who have the capability and the capacity to learn new things, to acquire new knowledge. Young people who are equipped with the necessary knowledge, skills, and competencies to adapt and thrive in new situations and in our ever-changing world. Third, universities and professional bodies have separate but complementary roles and responsibilities to prepare graduates for entry into their chosen profession. Fourth, universities should cooperate and collaborate. Universities should cooperate and collaborate with professional bodies to ensure that curricula intended for the education and preparation of graduates for their profession are regularly revised, they are updated, and that they incorporate the latest developments in the field, so that when young people graduate, they are ready, particularly at that interface between exiting university and entering the profession, that they are ready to enter that profession. Such an engagement and strong collaboration and cooperation between universities and professional bodies can ensure a better alignment between knowledge that underpins the profession, competencies and skills required by the profession, and the knowledge, skills, and competencies developed by universities. In this way, expectations of graduates, employers, and the society will be better served. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Prof. Mabizela. Fantastic timekeeping and for an incredibly important presentation about the relationship between our institutions and professional boards. I'm looking at the chat. I think some of the questions will come through a little bit later. So we'll keep some time at the end. But from my side, I wanted to ask you whether your sense is that this model that the three of you have proposed is used in other professional bodies other than SAICA. Just your impressions.
Chair, my view is that what we are developing with SAICA should serve as a model for all the other statutory or non-statutory bodies to work with universities. We both have a common interest in developing capable and competent professionals. There is no need to have tension between the bodies. And so we are hoping that this will serve as a very important model of engagement, so that on the one hand, the academic freedom that universities enjoy is not interfered with. At the same time, that accountability, which is public accountability in terms of the quality of the graduates that we produce, that is discharged, that it is discharged. And so I'm hoping that once we have finished this work with SAICA, that the curriculum intended to prepare graduates for the 21st century will then serve as a model to engage other professional bodies in a mutually beneficial manner that will serve our society and serve humanity.
Thank you very much, Prof. Sizwe. We'll now move on to our next speaker. Thank you very much, Prof. Sizwe. We'll share the questions as they come through and get some more inputs from you. Right. Our next speakers are now from SAICA. So I would like to introduce firstly Ms. Chantyl Mulder. She's been with SAICA since 1999. She has been instrumental and has played a leading role in programs like Tutuka, the Hope Factory. Chantyl has also served on various councils of universities. So she has played an active role in developing the higher education sector. Then with her is Mr. Robert Zwane. Robert, maybe you can switch on your camera as well. He's the Senior Executive for National Projects, and his responsibilities comprise SAICA's transformation and growth strategy. He served on the Department of Education and Training's independent and the Independent Regulatory Board of Auditors. He's worked at the University of Johannesburg, so we are very privileged to have the two of you to address us on professional training, and we look forward to listening to you. Over to you, Chantyl.
Thank you, Francois, and thank you for this wonderful privilege. A lot was said by Prof. Sizwe, and as SAICA, we're very privileged to be working with Prof. Prof said so many things that are true, and I'm just going to start with one quote. Education is what remains after the facts have been forgotten. And it's about the development of the mind and the development of the youngsters. And as we go through our presentation, you will see where we're going through, because for me and for us as a profession, our technical skills get outdated very quickly. Internationally, they change IFRS like one would change one's underwear. But there's other pervasive and enabling competencies which we need to think how we develop it. And we as a profession don't have the answers. That's why collaboration with the universities, with our training providers, becomes absolutely critical. So what we want to, between Robert and I, share with you today is just to remind you all, what does a profession mean? Why is it so important? Even our government often speaks about professionalization of the public sector. Why? Why do people need to belong to professions? We're going to have a quick discussion on that. a global view. I do believe that as SAICA, we don't exist in a cocoon. We have to be a global player. I'm very proud as I sit here today that we've got numerous reciprocity arrangements with international bodies. We hear daily, we've just been through a review by the Scottish Institute, and they said to us that our South African CAs are amongst the best in the world. And I take pride in that because it was Africa for Africa and South Africa for South Africa. We did it ourselves, working with our universities and our respective firms. And that delights me because you've always got a problem where you have to import, and particularly in Africa, they use the Institute of England and Wales model. They use the ACCAs, they use the CIMAs. We've done it for ourselves in this tiny little country we are at the point of Africa, and we can compete with every other massive professional body in the world. That should say something. I just want to go into IFAC and how we work together internationally and how important it is and what our massive role SAICA has played there. I want to speak about other imperatives. And what is important, and Prof spoke about it, we need to develop youngsters who contribute to the society. And it's how do we instill some of these and societal goals, the sustainable development goals and the new economies that we're all seeking for, that we leave a sustainable world behind. And it's not only CAs, it's the rest of the other. How do we inculcate this? And then 21st century skills, and Robert will take you through what Prof has already alluded to, SAICA's framework, high level, CA, and then professional education in the context of our nation, and then our key principles and challenges. I want to remind you of a slide which we've taken a tremendous amount of hammering, beating, but I also just want everybody to bear in mind. Many years ago, when I was on a flight to Cape Town, I read what the late Dr. Oliver Tambo said. A few drops of dirt doesn't muddy the sea. And unfortunately, yes, we've had our own issues, but it doesn't mean that our profession is corrupt and can't do what they need to do. A few drops. We need to hold them accountable, and I love that word that was said. It's about accountability. Now, you'll remember this phrase in the Zondo Commission. You are a chartered accountant, the judge said. With these words, the chairman seemed to indicate that more is expected of a member from the profession. So we are expected to uphold the standards that the profession is requiring for us. Now, if one looks into the context of the definition of a profession, what does it mean? And here, a definition I find very insightful, and obviously all our academics would like this as well. As I say, we take what we have from people who have a lot of in the literacy, and Cruz, Johnston and Cruz. They define a profession as an occupation whose core element is work-based, and it's based on a mastery of a complex body of knowledge. We all know that. And this definition, it can account for any profession, medical profession, lawyers, any profession where you've got a regulator, it's the same thing. It is a vocation in which knowledge of some department of science or learning or the practice of an art is founded upon it and is used in the services to others. We seem to forget that it's all about services to others. We've become such a self-interesting, everything has been so self-interest, but it's about knowledge and services to others. Critical, which as you've seen in the Zondo Commission, what the people in public expect from us, members are governed by codes of ethics and profess a commitment to competence, integrity, morality, altruism, and the promotion of the public good within their domain. I mean, that's why I think most people don't understand how on earth, if you're a chartered accountant, could this have happened if you remember these things? Well, this is what we are saying. That is the definition of a profession. And these commitments form the basis of a social contract between the profession and society. And the professions and their members are accountable to those served and to the society. And the sad thing for me, if we look where we are and currently worldwide, we don't understand public interest and society. It is so critical that we know that we exist within a society. We exist because of a whole load of other things. And it's not just about us and self-interest. We've got to uphold the highest standards of all time, codes of ethics, and profess a commitment to competence. And pressing that commitment to competence is what was raised in Prof. Mabizela's presentation. It's about learning to learn. And I don't think we've mastered that. How do we inculcate this learning to learn, that hunger for knowledge continuously, even in professional members, that you don't say once qualified, always qualified, that you seek that continuous knowledge. Now, if we look at our next slide, which defines our global view, internationally, and I'm quite sure most people know, as SAICA and in our profession, we have what we refer to as an International Federation of Accountants, IFAC. SAICA is a member body. And why this international association? It's all about best practice, relevance, mobility, and enhancing of trust. We work very closely together around that, now at the moment, particularly the chartered accountants bodies. That's why it is easy for a South African CAs. They can move to Europe, where we've got reciprocity arrangements, no problem. America, they can move to New Zealand, they can move to Australia. And if you think of SACWA's requirements and regulations, they always say to us, what is your international standing like, and where are you? Within our profession, we can proudly, and everybody will know, as I said to you, we've just had this review done by our Scottish counterparts. And what did they say? You deliver of the best chartered accountants in the world. Everybody wants a South African CA. They work hard. They know what they're doing. They know where we're going. Now, we were privileged as SAICA to be part of the international panel, which the IESB, it's the Education Board, which has now subsequently changed a panel on accountancy education. And just as we've got all these standards in accounting, as I'm sure if you read a set of financial statements, we also have pre-qualified education and training standards and standards in the workplace, CPD. It's critical. What do they require from assessment point of view, IES 6? So we, as the professional body, comply to international best practice. And that for us is critical because we want our members to be recognized internationally. And I need to just thank our universities today. We would never have been able to have actually achieved what we've done without the input from our universities and the relationships and the collaborations that we've had. However, when we look at the next slide, we're moving into a very different world for our youngsters. And we found with our youngsters, our younger CAs coming through, they want to understand their societal role. Never before have we had so many youngsters saying to Robert and I, how can I get involved? What can we do? Now, SAICA has adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. If you look at our balanced scorecard and you look at our strategic objectives, this is critical for us, critical that we work from our youngsters at a school level, from our youngsters at university to inculcate. So a lot of youngsters won't be able to do all 17 Sustainable Development Goals, but we've got competitions going to make them aware of it. We bring it into their curriculum. We're now going to have frameworks for which you report, integrated reporting. Gone are the days where you just actually present financial information. Shareholders and the world out there is asking for a new world, a sustainable world that you leave behind, that you haven't used up everything by what's left for the youngsters. So when we are looking, and Prof. Mabizela spoke about it, what are we trying to do and achieve? Now, surely it wouldn't only be our profession that is interested in the Sustainable Development Goals. It's something that we've got to say to ourselves, how do we get involved? How do we drive people towards it? And what changes do we need to do in our learning methodologies to have youngsters realize that they do not operate in a vacuum, they operate in a society, they operate in a community where they are expected to play a very big role. Now, a lot of people have seen the skill sets of the 21st century. They're all there. But I want to focus on 4. And when Robert takes you through our competency framework, you will notice where we're going And those skill sets are going to require very, very different teaching and learning methodologies. I think if ever we've all had to unlearn, relearn, change, and start all over again, we're going to have to think of these things, because the skill sets required of all of us, collaboration. And the interesting thing is people, they really don't like a lot of collaboration. We notice when we raise funding, gee, people don't want to work together. You might have a wonderful model and say, people, let's work together. And it's self-interest. It's not for the common interest of the youngster or the student or the development of skills. No. We're going to do our own thing. And what we're saying now, no. The skill set is collaboration, because not everybody has got all the answers. It's about critical thinking. I mean, that is such a fundamental skill. And again, it's not taught in a course. It's about how do we deliver and transfer the body of knowledge in a way that we impart certain of these enabling competencies. The third one, communication. And Robert and I are now going to be sitting through the third, I think it's the fourth one actually, of the review that we've just done on what is the problems with our APC and our ITC exams declining pass rates. One of the biggest problems, communication, business writing skills. And you can't just have a course and add it on. It's got to be integrated, that all of the youngsters actually can come and deal with it. And last but not least of the critical skills is creativity. How do we help our youngsters to be innovative, creative? What do we do with them while they are busy studying? So now, Robert, you are going to come up with our golden bullet that we think which Prof has been speaking about and take you through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Chantyl, and good morning to our colleagues. I just want to, I still have Thandi's words actually ringing in my head. When Thandi opened for us, Chair, she said education must be responsive. And the question is responsive to what? And I think Sizwe, Mabizela, you then came in and actually answered that question, that it's not just about preparing students or trainees for the world of work. It's making sure that students, trainees are able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. As you said, Sizwe, that if we focus on the world of work, that world of work is changing, rendering our graduates not so relevant. And that is why when it comes to our framework, Chantyl has brought it from a global perspective right to South Africa. If you look at the green aspects, those are the stuff that Chantyl spoke about in defining a profession. Those are quite important. But for us, as we focus on digital acumen, as we focus on relational acumen and business acumen in decision-making, quite important is how do we create sustainable value for our nation? How do we let our graduates be responsive to the needs of our nation? And then that actually also quite important on that is bringing that turquoise line, social citizenship, lifelong learning, ethics, very, very, very important. So for us, whether it is at a university level, as we accredit university, that is the framework we apply. And when they get to the world of work, that is the framework by which we live to ensure that our trainees, as they get to the world of work, remain relevant. And if I just share with you high level, just so you can see just how we train our CAs, if you look at this, this is our model. We have an academic education program, or our academic program, that is at the university level. The students will spend generally 4 to 5 years, depending on the university, doing an undergraduate and then a postgraduate diploma in accounting. And this is very important because we are collaborative and therefore as SAICA relying on the universities. Once they have done that, they move to the next level where they start their professional education. They have to do a minimum of 3 to 4 or 5 years of their practice. This is when we then start partnering with the training offices, with the auditing firms, with entities in corporate, so that they start getting what they've learned at their university and putting it in practice. but quite importantly, is ensuring that there is collaboration. The university needs to speak to the world of work. The world of work needs to speak to the university and speak to what is happening in society. So this collaboration and talking together is quite an important one. And as Sizwe also referred to, the fact that we have to ensure quality. During this time, we will also have 2 of our professional exams that the candidates will be writing as well. But very important, we cannot focus as a professional body on education and training without the context of our country. We cannot be ones that are focusing on building or growing our own timber. We cannot selfishly say we want CAs and then we just focus on that. If we want CAs, we have to make sure that there's a supply from a school level, from a university level. We therefore need to invest in ensuring that as a professional body, we are investing, as an example, in mathematics at a high school level. That is why we go out and partner with the provincial departments of education, partner with corporates, so that we also support learners at a school level through our development camps. Just this week, we had one of the MECs passing by our office because he had a meeting in Gauteng and said, I want to pass by you and just get to see what initiatives we can collaborate on. So that is very, very important. Currently, almost in 4 provinces, we are running winter camps, summer camps, assisting our students or learners in mathematics and other key subjects. We then get onto our undergrad and postgraduate, where we run our own bursaries to ensure that we are supporting students as well who want to study towards becoming CAs. And then again, on a trainee level, we don't just let you go out and be a trainee and qualify as a CA. We need to ensure that we are supporting students. We are supporting trainees. We are creating platforms for them to collaborate. We are creating platforms for those trainees to also go back to the university and give back. This model, as SAICA, we believe, ensures that as a professional body, we remain relevant to the issues that are happening in our country. But quite importantly, and just some key principles, and due to time, we can't really play you this video. There's a video that's so important that illustrates the fact that education takes time. If we are to invest in education, we are to also invest and sit back and realize that we won't expect results tomorrow. So it's very, very important that we look at those matters. Our boss has a saying that he always says, and I might mix the words up, but he says, change is incremental if you look at it in time, but over time, very radical. So it's very, very important that we start looking at that the little steps, the little collaboration we can have takes us forward. Education requires collaboration. From Thandi, Sizwe, Chantyl, they've spoken about that. And that is why we create communities of best practice. That is why we are partnering with USAf. And then education, very important, must be student focused. It must be candidate focused. If we forget that and we don't educate looking at the candidate, looking at the student, we might be wasting time. We cannot say we are educating when a student is hungry. We need to ensure that there's a holistic view in the development of our students, our trainees, and all of that. Professional bodies cannot focus on self-interest. We have to focus on building our country. Quite importantly, and I hope you will also suggest and you will send to us on the chat functionality what your recommendations are on how we address some of these challenges. Are universities and training partners structurally equipped to train for the 21st century? And here you look at some of those universities that are maybe, for lack of a better word, are historically Black universities. How are we equipping them? How are we resourcing them to ensure that they too are also equipped to train and to educate for the 21st century? And then relevance of current assessment models. If you look at what COVID has brought through to us, it has questioned how we educate, it has questioned how we assess. So we need to be coming together and looking at those models as well and ensuring that we are assessing in the right way. And very importantly, training versus business motives in our, as we indicated, that our students, once they finish university, they go into the world of practice. But we often see the world of practice being so business focused and therefore not getting to develop trainees and develop candidates for success in the profession. So we also need to balance the issue of training and education versus business motivations on that level. And again, we've said this as well, very importantly, how are we addressing the impact of COVID as a society? And if you look at the injustices, the inequalities that COVID has also revealed, is that those that are not so well-resourced get to be affected. So if we are in universities that are not well-resourced, how are we assisting? How are we as SAICA playing a role? How is the business community playing a role? And I can't stress this enough, Chantyl has mentioned as well, that the growing funding challenges to education, we're saying education takes time, but in a perfect world, if you are to educate well, if you are to train well, you are to actually make education and training personal. But to make education and training personal requires a lot of resources, requires a lot of attention, requires almost a personal touch. How do we raise funding to ensure that we are addressing education to that extent? And these are some of the questions that myself and Chantyl are sort of battle with every day, that requires you as our colleagues, as our partners, to ensure that we are coming together and addressing these challenges to ensure that we are educating students, trainees that remain relevant. As SAICA, our strategy, our motto is contributing to the sustainability of our profession, of our nations. And if we are to create, to contribute to the sustainability of our nations, we are to actually look at what is it that our nation requires from us as accountants and start playing that role carefully and importantly. So that ensures that as professional bodies, whether you are SAICA, you are ACCA, you are SAIPA, that ensures that you remain relevant when you start looking at your learning and development activities in the context of your nation. So I think that's where we will stop. We're available to take questions. Chair, thank you so very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much to Chantyl and to Robert. Very inspiring presentation in combination with Prof. Sizwe. This is really inspiring and enthusing us to think differently and also to think positively about how we do things differently in our context. As Thandi indicated, our context has so much to offer the world, and that one shouldn't get preoccupied. I loved your quote from Oliver Tambo, Chantyl, you must please email it to me because it wasn't on the slide. You know, that we have so much to offer. There was a question from Dr. Engela van Staden, Chantyl, she says hi, but she also wanted to know—
Hi, Engela, thanks.
how you are developing digital skills. Now, she said while you were speaking, you have started addressing that. I don't know whether there's anything a bit more detail you want to talk about just how important the digital skills have become and what you guys are looking at.
Thank you, Francois, and hi, Engela. Engela and I have come a long way together. I miss her. I miss you, Engela. I miss everybody, actually. I don't like lockdown. I was ready to come and do a face-to-face presentation and give you all a hug, but I was told, no, you sit in SAICA offices, Teams. So here I am. Engela, you know, digital acumen, COVID brought around, I think, all of us a much quicker push. If I think of what has happened, you know, our Tutuka students did not have laptops. Amazing, you know, but true. So NEXUS came to our rescue, so we will forever be grateful, so that they helped us in making sure that all our students had at least laptops. So, I mean, it's things we just take for granted in this day and age. The youngsters don't have access to data. Data in our country is still incredibly expensive. So we've got to get the basics right before we can even start remotely speaking about proper digital acumen. And what we're finding is that in our profession, I don't think personally, and Robert can help me, and Robert nod or say something, that our universities and our current departments of accounting are equipped to provide the digital acumen and what we believe are the skill sets. Because look, our people are not IT specialists, but this whole thing about dealing with a lot of data analytics, you don't know how to do it, but you need to interpret the information. And that's where it's that skill set which required. So it's a combination. We're working very closely with the Canadian Institute of Chartered Accountants. Now, I know people will murder me if I say it. I still think England, they are the world's best, and they're very advanced in some of these different acumens. So we're learning a lot from them. We are going to share and they have already shared all the material with us. I mean, we're busy with the learner management system, which we're going to make available to everybody. Because as what Prof rightfully said, as a profession, we can't dictate. The universities decide how they want to offer, what they want to do, how they teach and learning methodologies. We give guidance, we provide input. So, England, we've got a long way to go, because in our profession, a lot of youngsters believe they don't want to become CAs anymore because there's not going to be work for them. With this new 4IR and all the things that you're going to be doing. So we've had a lot of courageous conversations. We've had the CFO of Discovery come and speak to us. No. There's always going to be a need for a CA. But that's why this project is so different, because they're going to require different skill sets. You're going to have computers that can prepare IFRS financial statements. And in any case, it's so specialized, and there's so many of these statements, you just can never keep up. I think you need a doctorate to be able to interpret a set of financial statements. But the CA has got to have a whole lot of other skills. And that's the trick. So digital acumen, absolutely. But what we're looking for is that everything is integrated in their learning process and not standalone. So forget it. It's not about a standalone Cobalt. When I did it years ago, I know it doesn't even exist anymore, but it'll tell you how old I am. But I mean, it's not that. Integrating the whole concept of digital acumen within their current things that they do, equipping them with the tools and the IT equipment, getting the basics right is for me where it starts, which, I don't even think we've got far. Robert, anything from your side in that you want to add?
So thank you so very much, Chen and Chair, for allowing us the opportunity. Engele, your question is quite an important one. And that is why the collaboration we've been talking about comes to play so importantly. We've set up a communities of best practice to bring about the universities together to share what they are doing in each of the universities around the promotion or the development of digital acumen. What we are starting to see is the Department of Accounting actually employing skills like computer science experts and all of those within the Department of Accounting. We're seeing that move being quite an important one. However, also quite important is that we also have members that have been in the profession for a long time. We also need to upskill those members and promote lifelong learning. And that is why I remember the meeting a few years back, I think it was 2019, I attended a meeting with one of the VCs and Chantyl was leading the meeting. And I remember Chantyl saying, VC, you are going to ensure that our members are upskilled. And within literally 3 months, we had developed short courses with that university so that our members who have been in the profession for a while are able to go out and look at what is AI, what is artificial intelligence, what is 4IR, what does it mean for me? And we're seeing a number of our members coming through and attending those short courses as well. So it's very important that we also tap into the best practices that exist within our universities. So that is how we are looking at it as SAICA. Just last week, we brought about all of our trainees in one room, and we brought young people who are CAs but are focused on the digital space within the banks, so that trainees are inspired and are encouraged to go out and read. One thing that came out in that meeting, Engela, was that the speaker said, remember, information is literally at your fingertips. If you open your internet, you have the universities available. You have YouTube where you can learn. And we're actually starting to see young people that are becoming experts in coding, yet they've never gone to any university. One of our very own managers does her own coding because she educates herself outside work. And this is why the quotation that Mabizela used earlier on to say the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who can't read or write. It will be those who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. So we need to also encourage that kind of attitude towards our members, towards our educators as well. And that is why we are also looking at bringing such short courses as well to our very own lecturers so that they also upskill themselves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much to the two of you. I don't see any other questions. If we have some time at the end, we'll have some more for you, but thank you for a wonderful presentation. Our next presenter, and I'm going to ask her to put on her camera, is Noluthando Toni. She is the Director for Teaching Development in the Learning and Teaching Collaborative for Success Division at Nelson Mandela University. She was head of the Teaching and Learning Center at Fort Hare. She has a passion for transforming curricula, advancing learning opportunities for students, has been working in academic development for quite a while, has published in this area, and she's also interested in women leadership in higher education. Noluthando, as always, wonderful to see you, and it's going to be great to listen to you.
Good afternoon, Francois, and good afternoon, colleagues. And after Sizwe, Linda, Chantyl, and Robert, I feel like just saying here are the concluding remarks. As Prof was talking, I felt like saying, to adequately prepare students for the future, we need to make the present count. So without wasting time, that's limited, I am going to get on with it, colleagues. I'm trying to do slideshow. Is it doing it?
Perfectly.
Okay. Colleagues, I thought long and hard about how best to articulate my ideas around the practice theory nexus subtheme in learning and teaching for the purposes of producing graduates who are equipped for the future. My thesis is therefore centered around student engagement for the enhancement of learning and teaching. That's why I was saying mine is to just wrap up and provide concluding remarks. I found while I was thinking about this nexus and preparing graduates for the future, I found a stimulation from what you are seeing on the screen, the extract from Paulo Freire's work around dialogical action. I'll just leave it there for a few seconds for everyone to read. I'm not going to read it out loud. I just want, for the purposes of this presentation, I would like to put emphasis on the last sentence that says human activity is theory and practice. It is reflection and practice. Colleagues, yesterday, Professor Vasu Reddy covered what is on the screen, and I am not going to dwell too much on that. What I want to say, because Prof. Mabizela briefly mentioned curriculum development and renewal. For me, curriculum development and renewal form part of the key aspects of my argument. I wish to make it clear that when I talk about curriculum, I intentionally included all these interpretations. I know yesterday Prof. Reddy spoke about the knowledge production and all of that. I decided to put it like that. And because some, if I do it like that, some might interpret that as a fragmented approach. I must, however, hasten to mention that I subscribe to a holistic and integrated approach to curriculum development. However, to make my point, I want to touch on these various interpretations, and some might have a limitation. The reason why I'm doing this is because the last one has a direct link to the argument that I want to make this afternoon. My key argument revolves around using curriculum development and renewal processes as navigational tools for student engagement in order to enhance learning and teaching. I am of the view that reflective practices are part of the points of convergence between theory and practice. And to further clarify the connectedness between theory and practice, I wish to lean on Emenda's assertions that says practice is guided by theory, whilst practice enable the testing of theory and generates questions for research. And talking about questions, colleagues, I think I have come up with questions that I might not necessarily comprehensively addressed for this presentation, but I want to put them to you or to all of us. Firstly, what is the nature of student engagements around curriculum development and design at all levels? When I'm talking about all levels, I mean from program levels to modules. Some might be talking about levels such as a macro level, meso level, and micro level. So how are students involved in that? How do we engage our students in curriculum development at those levels? And of importance to me is, what do teacher-learner relationships tell us about the quality of these engagements? And lastly, how do we utilize quantitative and qualitative data to enhance or inform learning and teaching activities? Like I said, I may not necessarily answer these questions comprehensively, but it is my wish that we all think about these questions in engaging in learning and teaching matters for the benefits of our graduates and their future. Because Prof. Mabizela is right by saying we are preparing them for problems that have not even been identified. So we need to create critical thinkers. And how do we go around doing that? Colleagues, this is just an argument for me. I'm making an argument. And in making my argument, because the sub-theme is practice, theory, nexus, I had to rely on a theoretical framework to advance my argument. And colleagues, for obvious reasons, reflective practice forms part of my conceptual repertoire for this theory-practice nexus, as elaborated by Frey, Rhodes, and many others. And again, as a way of strengthening the theoretical base for my argument, deliberate engagements are part of my theoretical base, and they are derived from the deliberate democratic theory. And finally, I know this will make Professor Zinn very happy. Humanizing pedagogy has informed my theoretical foundation. Again, colleagues, as a way of advancing my thesis, I want to put forward the following as main ideas. They are there. That is the futuristic curriculum renewal processes that encapsulate student engagement and reciprocity between students and academics. Another idea is curriculum as an experience. This is what I articulated earlier on when I listed the interpretation. Curriculum as an experience, meaning engaging in activities, reflection, and action. An experience to enrich the experiences of not just students, but students and academics. And I won't go into the rationale for the choices of these conceptual frameworks, but I want to say that when it comes to this engagement and when it comes to the deliberate democratic theory, I want to highlight that a silent feature of deliberation is the emergence of inner voices. That's what attracted me. That is a silent feature, is that there is that understanding and platform that is created for voices, emergence of voices of those engaging in dialogical discourse. And Rife, when explaining further, talks about stories, leadership, apprenticeship as amongst the mechanisms that promote successful deliberation. And the future requires graduates who can articulate themselves, and the future requires graduates who are critical thinkers. And how do we engage our students in order for them to be such? Colleagues, reflective practice necessitates deliberate conversation with students about how they experience one's teaching. Consequently, students and academics do an analysis that would lead both to the identified learning objectives. This is where Frere's notion of reflection and action become more meaningful. Paulo Freire says, human activity is theory and practice. It is reflection and action. In my earlier work with a colleague, Alfred Makura, we defined reflection as a conscious process that consists of naming and describing observable behaviors and skills of learners. This is then followed by a detailed articulation and professional discussion, and finally ponderance over the effect of one's actions on others, taking into consideration various factors of the educational context. And then coming back, colleagues, to curriculum renewal processes at various levels. COVID-19 reminded us of the importance of deliberate engagements with students. In my previous talk at a different platform, Francois' platform, I argued that student voices should not be taken seriously only when we do module and teaching evaluation at the end. They also should not be only taken seriously for political reasons. We need to take their inputs, their experiences, and we need to engage our students throughout the curriculum design and renewal processes. And I am proud to say that at Mandela University, we, by we, I mean the LT Collab, which is the academic development division, we created safe spaces for engagements where both students and academics shared their experiences on remote and online learning and teaching. The platform or discussion forum was initially created for academics to share emerging innovations and how they navigated their way around the very challenging time. As much as the space served the purpose of sharing and empowering one another, it became evident that student voices needed to be heard. It was important to hear students articulate their own experiences instead of anecdotal references from their lecturers' perspectives. We were intentional about putting the spotlight on students. We were intentional about putting the spotlight on students' experiences, their challenges, and most importantly, colleagues, insights on what still needed to be done to make learning more accessible to our students, okay? It was important to hear student voices because Paulo Freire asserts that human beings are not built in silence, but in word, in action, and in reflection. So we cannot and should not be talking about advancement of learning without student engagements in voice and in action. We cannot, on one hand, reject the banking concept of education and on the other, limit student engagements to the social or semi-academic spheres. So our students had to engage with us and they had positive experiences. They had challenges that they articulated. I was just being dramatic by putting negative experiences. Those are challenges that students articulated and that we worked around. And I want to move very fast because these positive experiences and challenges are well documented. There were surveys that were done and we are aware of those. So I will save a bit of time by not going through all of them. But what was comforting was that students were motivated to take responsibility for their own learning, meaning that they did not need to be pushed. They needed to be responsible. There was an increased sense of independence. Leadership skills came to the fore, and there was improvement of communication skills. And when they were asked, what is it that can be done? And they felt that it was important that application questions were used more often than memory questions, and that there needed to be more online consultation and providing support for learning materials. The challenges are known, challenges that are linked to data, challenges that students felt that the assessment activities were just too many. At times they felt that there was just too much content to deal with. And other challenges emanated from unfavorable home conditions. So it is from these experiences that we as academic developers are prompted to think about creative ways of supporting and working with academics in our professional development endeavors. Academics also got to hear and interact with students with diverse experiences. When the platform was created, academics did not only hear from their own students, they heard from other students, and that made them think about their own practices. Yesterday, we heard about the importance of self-introspection or self-reflection. Before we want to fix others, we need to focus on ourselves. I'm looking at the time, Francois. I said the navigational tool that I'm using for this engagement is curriculum development and curriculum renewal processes. One useful navigational tool of this is to begin by asking questions about ways of delivering a set of curricula that will not challenge only us as designers and facilitators of the teaching and learning processes, but also challenge our students to ask critical questions. This therefore prompts us to go beyond viewing curriculum from the perspective of content, knowledge, outcomes that needs to be achieved. Go beyond that, that is important, but we must also seriously interrogate what is meant by curriculum as experiences inside and outside the classroom. We need to relate knowledge creation and mediation of learning to the actual lived experiences of our students, because they can relate and they can make reference to what they are experiences. And the renewal process should also take into consideration social reconstruction and cultural reproduction and transformation. So the planned activities and those activities that emerge during the teaching and learning process, if curated creatively with student participation, will ultimately contribute to graduateness, the graduates of the future that we are talking about. Before I keep quiet, Francois, I feel that the renewal process should empower students to eloquently articulate their lived experiences. Eloquence, in my view, includes giving students space to also use their own languages or languages they are fluent in. My colleague Toko Baki often talks about the importance of code switching and trans languages in order for students to be comfortable in voicing their experiences, because we know that we need to articulate ourselves via language. And lastly, this is my last slide. I wish to conclude by citing Carol Rogers when she says, reflection is a tool used in the transformation of raw experience into meaning-filled theory, grounded in experience, informed by existing theory, and serves moral growth of individual and society. I think I want to just lastly end off by reading Paulo Freire's a line that says, education is constantly remade in the praxis. Practice requires theory to illuminate it. And that, to me, vividly indicates the nexus between the two. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Toni. As always, a thought-provoking presentation, underlining the importance of taking our students' voices seriously, engaging rigorously with theory, and then creating a space for reflection. So thank you very much for that. During your presentation, Bradley Rink reflected on how he makes use of it in his courses at UWC. So thank you very much for that. I want to maybe take this opportunity to just about your presentation to ask, by creating this reflective space, what do you see happening to academics? Your reflections on what it does to them. Because we talk often about the importance of it and why it's so important for students, but just some of your reflections on if you create these spaces, what happens?
I think when we create these spaces, students will give us ideas and make us interrogate our own ways of doing and our own ways of being. Because sometimes we take things for granted. And when students articulate their experiences, we get to think about how we are doing things and also transform our ways. Just very quickly, I am reminded of a time I was a lecturer in the education faculty. And at the time, I was still very junior. And one of my duties was to make sure that those students who don't fare very well academically, I give supplementary sessions. And I decided that I was going to have one-on-ones with them because I didn't want to embarrass anyone. At that time, there were only a few students. And I was fascinated by a response that says, I'm not doing very well because I'm struggling to understand English. I need to unpack the language before I deal with content. And yet here you are claiming to be of service to me, trying to help me. And yet you are isiXhosa speaker. You keep on talking to me in English and you're not helping me. I am Xhosa, you are Xhosa. Why do you insist on speaking English with me? It never occurred to me. I was speaking the simplest English because it's my third language, because they are going to write exams in English. So I might as well try to break it down in English, thinking that I was the person. And yet it got to me that I was not helping as much as I thought I was helping. Great.
Thank you very much for that. Professor Zinn asks a question. She indicates that she's working on a group or with a group on a new curriculum for the Bachelor of Dental Sciences. And she would like to know how one can capture students' experiences in their voices and their voices in the process of developing a new curriculum. Your thoughts?
I will also let others speak. I remember I once made a comment that students must be involved in the design. And another colleague said, do I think that students are knowledgeable enough to give input on the design? And my response was, by students, we can be talking about current students, third-year students who have gone through the process, but we must not forget about the alumni, people who have gone through the system, who have experienced the system, who can give us feedback about the gaps and those aspects that are exciting about our curriculum. That's my short response.
Thank you very much. Correction from my side. That was a question from George Makubalu. Thank you for the question, George. We had a discussion, Noluthando. I want to go back to a theme Professor Mabizela wants to talk to, and you can also give your perspective, but I want to let him come in first. Prof. Mabizela, you said you wanted to give some perspectives in relation to scarce resources, which came through in several presentations that we are under pressure. So we would like to hear your perspective.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be very brief, and this is probably my final input. Just 3 or so quick points. I'm a strong and a passionate proponent of cooperation and collaboration for the greater common good. There is a saying which goes along the lines, a candle does not lose its brightness if another one is lit from it. And in fact, the greater benefit is the dispelling of darkness. So we must always make sustainability a central organizing frame in all that we do. In other words, it has to be a leitmotif through all that we do. I come to the issue which was raised about scarce resources. And let me just focus primarily on SAICA. Let me tell you, I'm a Vice-Chancellor. It is very difficult to attract and retain professors in accounting because the private sector pays so well. Now, for the sustainability of the profession, it is in the best interest of the profession to provide subvention for good and competent people to educate and train more accountants. In other words, because we cannot afford the remuneration that is available in the private sector, how about working together with universities and providing that subvention to retain good professors in accounting to develop and train new accountants? And that is part of sustainability of the profession and the sustainability of our society. How about ensuring that the boundary between universities and professions are softened so that those who are in the private sector who are practicing are able to take time off to contribute in the training and the development of the next graduates in a particular profession. So that's the kind of cooperation and imaginative and creative thinking that we should embrace if we are to deal with issues of resources. And I think it was mentioned by Chantyl and it was mentioned by Robert about the shortage of resources. But we can very creatively and imaginatively address the scarce skills by ensuring that we provide subvention. I cannot, as a Vice-Chancellor, pay or approve remuneration of a professor in accounting, which is 2 or 3 times higher than any other professor, it creates an inequity in the system. However, if the profession is so passionate about the sustainability of their profession, how about providing a subvention for universities, all universities, to retain those high skills? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Prof. Mabizela. I think that's a very fitting end to this very inspiring session. I want to thank all our presenters, Dr. Thandi Lewin, Prof. Mabizela, Ms. Chantyl Mulder, Mr. Robert Zwane, and Dr. Noluthando Toni. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives with us and helping us think differently about the theory praxis nexus. Colleagues, I hope you enjoy your lunchtime and this afternoon's events. Thank you to everybody for joining us.